Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. In this video, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about and ask the question and explore are we being true to our role? I know that's a big one. This could be another one that I could turn into a series, but we'll try to compress it as best possible, right? to to get the points across and explore the avenues that we should or could or can. And really, this is really a self-reflective kind of exploration, really, right? So, what do we mean by? Oh, and before I get started, remember we often talk about jumping in, talking about organizational culture only because that's where we often come together as teams to organize ourselves and to work collaboratively, hopefully, to accomplish a goal of serving our customers, right? But all dots connect because even people outside of our organizations, specifically to say work, or clubs, organizations, faith groups, family, friend groups, all the groups, right? All the dots connect. So use the information wisely, right? Practically, right? Safely, honestly, lovingly, right? For your benefit and the benefit of those around you. All right. All that said, are we being true to our role? Now, what do I mean by are we being true to our role? This has many layers to it, right? You can really look at there's the layer of there's the role where I work, right? I do X at work, and at home, whatever your role at home is, that's one. Your role within your other groups could be two, your role, and so on and so forth, right? You might coach kids soccer. That's another role, right? So there's varied layers to this. But generally speaking, as we're talking about this, we can really apply any of it to all aspects of roles that we play. And we can also peel back the onion just a little bit to find out a little bit how we got here, right? Because we didn't get here, I don't think, by accident, right? Whatever your faith or your belief system is, whether you believe, that we're just a random spark or a divine creation, which is my thought process. Either way, you are definitely not experiencing life through a random set of occurrences, right? The synergy and some of the, I won't say randomness, but you could say, I guess you could say a little bit of the magic in life, right? The journey of life and the roles that we create. If we go back to when we're in our youth, and not everybody played sports, but you can apply it to anything you were involved with, really. Doesn't matter what it was. But I remember playing soccer, and I was a fullback in soccer, football for those across the pond. And, and I could launch that ball, and I enjoyed it. I would launch that thing back into the, back up into the scoring range, basically and make it real easy on my team. And I enjoyed that. But there wasn't a lot going on back there, right? Just kind of waiting for the opportunity and then launch. Opportunity, launch. And this one, I guess you say it was a tournament. It was like a city league when we were younger. And the goalie was gone. I can't remember, vacation or something or another, out of town, a good friend of mine. And he used to dive. I mean, he would dive for everything. And even to this day, it puts a smile on my face to think of him diving. We'd play football in the three-person football in the park, and he would dive into it. I'd throw the ball long on purpose sometimes just to have the opportunity to see him launch like Superman into a big pile of leaves or something to catch the ball. But anyway, he was gone. So I had to play goalie. And of course, I'm nervous as a cat, because I'm going, oh my gosh, I hope the ball doesn't come back here. And sure enough, toward the end of the game, game on the line, the whole bit. And then I had to, defend the goal for a penalty kick where one person essentially has the opportunity to just kick it right at you, not right at you, but into the goal. And it's your job to stop it. And, I was ready and waiting. He kicked it, and then I just remembered what my buddy used to do. And I launched myself into the air and blocked it. We won the game, and it was really cool. But these are just little snippets in our life, whether you're in sports. If you were in sports, and I can tell you, that's such a small fingernail of an example. I've had the craziest amount of experiences in sports, not even to talk about professional, but in sports, whether it be basketball or any sport really, but an activity where these certain things happened where you came out of one role to play another role. Now, you may have had that experience where somebody took you out of your role, out of your comfort zone, and put you into new territory. And then, well, you're on the line. You got to perform, right? I had bosses toward the end of my Air Force career who were like, "Hey, we're trying to fix this thing." Boom, and some weeks later, I came back and went, "Here you go. Here's the solution. $30 million saved." I figured out that was another thing that I was really good at that was really not carved out in my Air Force career specifically. And then I went on to take advantage of helping others, right? Take advantage of helping others. I don't know if that makes any sense, but take advantage of the opportunity to help others, because service is kind of imprinted on my DNA, I believe. And you may have had similar experiences in sports and professionally where you've been in these roles and you've progressed, and these opportunities weren't necessarily the things that were shaping you. They may have been, little tests along the way, right? Little gates, right? If you think of it, the gatekeeper, we're a gatekeeper for ourselves, right? We can be gatekeepers in our own, and I mean in a positive sense, not in a negative, harsh kind of, conspiracy theory sense, but gatekeeper in the sense of here's a gate. Now, are you going to walk through it? Because there's only one way. And once you go through that gate, you're going to become more useful doing this than you were doing that, right? You may find more enjoyment doing this than you did doing that, right? And so on and so forth. But you don't know that. There is no guarantee, right? So this is when we're questioning, are we being true to our role? We have to also understand that role is morphing, right? And depending on your, life philosophy, are we living multiple lives or one life and learning along the way? One thing I don't know, I jokingly say is the divine is finding a lot of amusement, because if you think about all of us living out those lives of ups and downs and so on and so forth and challenges and whatnot, isn't life just a giant game show? Kind of when you boil it right down, it's a game show, and the heavenly audience, if you will, is probably being entertained quite well, right? Which is another reason why play, having fun and play. I know when we do, and I'm a little bit left turn off the garden path here, but doing improvement projects and so forth, when the team lightens up and goofs around a little and plays, when you've had those moments where a team or a group is trying to figure something out, but you get a little bit, your brain gets a little, spent, and you get a little giddy, right? I'm not saying you're drunk, but I am saying that you feel like, you're, a little low on calories, a little tired, start to laugh at stupid stuff. That kind of, start to hit that threshold, but you all start to kind of hit that threshold. And what you've done really is you've kind of let go, right? Because folks, for us to find and to play these roles out, to make it through those gates, to find breakthrough, whether as a group or as individuals in our own roles, right? We have to be like a boat that's tethered to the dock. We have to let go of that dock. This is part of that giddiness I was talking about, or giddiness, that, kind of silliness, maybe is a better word. You got to kind of have to let go of that dock, right? Of seriousness, and be able, that seriousness where you can't laugh at yourself and everything is, we got to just figure it out. It's all ones and zeros. It's just, on or off or black or white and blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. No, it's not. You can throw anything at me all day long and I will show you where the gray exists, right? You show me certainty and I will unravel it. Not because we don't want order, but because for us to evolve, we have to be able to let go of the dock And the premise here is that there's certainty when I'm lashed to that dock, if I'm the boat. But it's certainty that you have to challenge, right? Now, it doesn't mean you have to be unsafe. You don't want to untether yourself from a dock to go into a giant hurricane, right? Or typhoon, depending on where you're at. And that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about making ridiculously unsafe risks. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about challenging our comfort zone and potentially in our roles, right? And are we being true to our role? Now, you might have thought when I broke that as a topic, you might have thought, well, you're talking about the role that I do, and this is who I am. I'm always a this, and I'm always a that, and I'm da 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 da. No, are you being true to the role of who you're becoming? Not just who you are and who you've been, but who you're becoming. And have you lashed yourself to the dock of rigidity to such an extent that you can't be flexible, right? Would you take a 80% pay cut to do something that you love, right? Not being unsafe, not putting your family at risk, but would you take a chance for yourself, right? Maybe you want to learn something completely new. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to, sing. Maybe you want to be a comedian. You want to stand on stage and, make jokes, which I think would be really fun, although I'm not really that funny. But we don't get to those things. We don't get to explore those things if we're not being true to our role. So when I say our role, I'm talking about deeper than just what is obvious from the external, right? From the outside of people seeing us. Well, you're this and you're that. And you're, labels. People are comfortable with labels. Look, folks, fine. We kind of have to know what people do, generally speaking. We got to have a label. It's like, oh, this is the president of the company. And oh, this is the thing. And this is our engineer. And this is our, all the things, right? Fine. But we can't believe the hype. We have to outgrow the role or be more than just that role. That's a comfortable role that labels us for that position and work that we do. Fine. But we have to be able to see beneath that, right? See within that, right? Peel that onion back and go, no, you are what? If you're nothing else, you are a creator, right? Engineer, you're a creator, right? You're a machinist, you're a creator. You're a technician, you're a creator. Even if you're doing repetitive work, you're creating something, right? That people are taking advantage of as a product or service, right? So you are a creator. At the core of it, we are all creators. Now, the fun part is we get to go, oh, cool, we're creators. Right? And now step back and get away from the rigidity and go, all right, well, what have my experiences, my talents, skills, and abilities, along with my experiences, what have they been slowly but surely grooming me towards, right? What is it pushing me towards? Is it pushing me toward being a leader? Is it a department head, just a really great dad or a great mom or a great, this or a great, whatever, right? Great mechanic, right? A great car, a race car driver, a great rock climber, a great whatever. And I'm not, and when I say great, let's not get caught up in the competitive nature of who's the best in the world. No, you don't focus on who's the best in the world and go, oh, I want to be the best in the world. If you're focused on being the best in the world, it's like, it's like saying, I'm going to make the best pizza that anyone has ever tasted. How is that even? It's a subjective thing, right? There may be some markers, right, for success, of course. But it may be that who you're influencing and helping are in a pool of life where that's needed, right? If you're the best pizza maker in a country where they can barely have enough food to eat, do you really need to be the best pizza maker? Do you have to be a person who's going to make really good pizza, affordably good pizza that's healthy, that can feed the masses, right? Isn't that greatness? Right? So it's perspective, folks. We have to look at perspective. We measure so much against the dollar, and I'm not saying it's a great metric. It's a fantastic metric. But we also have to understand there is a value going into the creation of ourselves, and as we're creating, we are helping others to create. And we're creating, we're actually creating one another through our experiences, right? Think of all those smooth stones in the river, right? They didn't just pop up smooth stones, they became smooth stones because they were interacting off of one another to eventually become those smooth stones under pressure. This is part of the reason I get to more of a divine conversation here, is because this is the drama. It's watching, it's how's the sausage getting made, right? It's not always pretty, right? It might be an ugly, pressurized, screechy, loud process, but in the end, what beauty is created from that? Now think of our lives. You may have had a life of struggle, but that struggle is teaching you some things. It is carving you out. It is making you a smooth stone. But if you stop halfway without recognizing that this is going on, right? If you're tethering yourself to the dock in this instance, it's kind of hard to mix the analogy of the boat and the rock, right? But you're tethered to the dock, right? And not letting go, aren't you just like the stone that refuses to be, smooth over the course of its lifetime or its life and so forth through time? We are. So we have to let go of that dock. We have to be willing to be hands open, hands free, right? Understand that we're going to be used to help others become better and vice versa. It isn't there is in no part of this is it about, oh, you're evil and bad and you're great and da da da. No. Because if you're focused on the other rocks, you're missing the point. That's a given that you're smoothing each other out. We take it personally and we become warlike in our mentality, and then we forget that we are all stones. We are all stones, folks. There isn't any one of us that's like, well, I'm not a stone. No, we are all stones, and we will all be smoothed by the process. Now, maybe some are resistant, but in the end, the pressure will find us all, right? It may be in the front end of life, it may be in the back end of life, maybe in the middle of life, or maybe all throughout life, right? But pressure is a constancy, okay? It's how you view it, your perspective of that pressure, that is going to determine how much you enjoyed it, right? How much you enjoyed your role through that process. You were a squared off, little block of, granite, but in the end, you became a smooth stone. But along the way, you were a jagged, messed up thing, right? We were all jagged, messed up things, right? And through that process, now we look around midway and we start going, oh, well, so-and-so they're a jagged. And, oh, yeah, so-and-so, they're jagged. We're all jagged. But we're all looking around at each other going, oh, we're all jagged. Not understanding this is a process. It's a process, folks. And if we start judging each other in the midst of the process and you don't know how long the process is, try as you might, as certain as you think you are, this process could be hundreds of thousands of years long. And rather than just our physical life, it might be our soul, right? Being smooth, refined, the amperage turned up, the glow increased, right? Now we're a brighter light to more as we go. Perhaps it's also a bit of as those rocks are being smooth, it's also wearing off the outer coating. And now we're becoming crystals, right? Beautiful crystals, still jagged, right? Not smooth, but we're starting to see the reflection of the light off of those, right? So now back to the roles, right? Because you might probably be thinking, well, we kind of went down a different path there. Sure, but everything is connected. Again, folks, you're doing a role within your profession, you're doing a role in your personal life and in the groups that you're associated with within culture and community, right? Remember, the key takeaway here is, are we being true to our role, right? Like the rock, right? The rock that rolls. Are we being true to the role? Okay? It's not necessarily a position. It's an experience. It's a phase of an experience that starts from one way, one place and goes to another and continues on. So are we being true to the role? Or are we clinging to a phase within, we'll say, an actual role, a role within our life that has been safe, right? Because maybe our talents, what if you're a writer? What if you're a singer? what if you're a really fantastic bowler, but you're like, "Nah, I don't want to try to be a professional bowler." Then you did, right? Or you're really funny. You're like, I don't know, kind of got a little bit of stage fright, which I mean, it's a pretty common thing, right? And but then you do, and then people are laughing, and you're like, "Oh wow, that was really fun," right? Or anything of the same, where we it's not always, folks, it's a lot of times it's couched in, well, conquer your fear, find what you're afraid of, and run at that. How about just let go of what others think that you are supposed to be and what you thought you were supposed to be, and let your boat float away from that dock. And now, in the openness, now you can be like, then just go out there and step up on stage and be funny, whatever, whatever, right? Do your thing, prepare, whatever. Don't overthink it. Same way, because when you go through those gates, from this roll, right, and you're rolling along, and you go through this gate, and you're rolling along. My dad, I can't remember if it was somebody he knew or if he'd had it, but basically had a rock on the it was like smooth stone on the desk, and it said, "Turn me over, please turn me over," something like that. And then flip the rock over, and it said, "Thank you," right? Just a little dadism there, because you essentially are turning over, right? Turning over a new leaf, turning over a new phase of life, turning over, going through gates, uh, changing your role. You don't want to say up leveling. I mean, we say ascending. We're all ascending, right? Even if it's ugly and difficult, there's always ascending. You may you may you may be overly judgmental about that journey. You may be looking back going, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe." Well, sure, have that moment of going, "I can't believe it." But be like, you know what? Other people have their can't believes too. We have all had our can't believes, right? We have all let ourselves down, right? But being true to our role is what? Understanding that this is a phase, there's a process here. And if you're true to the process, and then if you're open, kind, and loving towards your fellow rocks, right? Fellow pieces of granite and snow rolling down the underneath, getting crunched up underneath the glacier and so forth. If you understand that we're all going through this process, then parables tend to make more sense now, don't they? Because it's a process. This isn't about, I'm going to be a better rock than you're going to be, and so on and so forth. Well, you're a crystal, and oh, you're a piece of granite, and you're this, and you're that, and basalt. Oh, get out of here. You know, it's a folly to go down that path. It's a waste of time. Why is that? Because even though we may be at the grand forces of refinement, we also get to choose based on our knowledge, skills, abilities, and the passions that we have toward and for about those, right? It might be that you've been prepared for all of these different things, and then you go, oh my gosh, this thing over here, boom. I'm going to make X, Y's, and Z's, whatever it is, right? And it's something that nobody ever thought you would ever do. You may have had a glimmer of a thought of thinking, oh, this would be fantastic. But then you kind of put it away because you're like, yeah, that's crazy. I'm not going to do that. That's not practical. Who cares if it's practical? Now, in the interest of safety and not being ridiculous, you don't have to jump completely out of the skin of your old life. There are those of us who do that and who have done that, right? That's a decision an individual has to make for themselves. No point in this am I ever going to tell you, oh, you got to jump out of your current life into something completely different, right? No. Making those decisions is an arrived at conclusion for a person in their own experience, right? And maybe you're going down a particular river and you're like, ooh, I am off course. This is not the right. No, I am not it. And that's the other thing about being true to our role as it relates to organizations now is you may have been underneath the wing of, and I don't say wing, but underneath the guise of, well, you're really great at this position, And we want you to stay there forever and ever. And in your brain, you're thinking, yeah, I'll do this for a few years. And then, I really want to go do this. But then people are blocking you out, blocking you in, right? Hiring other people for those roles, say from externally, excuse me, externally. And so you may have not had the opportunity to do it and you're getting irritated, right? Yeah, at some point, and you may have been on this journey already where you've had to say, you know what, I'm out, right? Either this or that, I'm out. And you have to make those tough calls sometimes. But that's an individual choice a person has to make with all of the responsibilities and all the things attached to their life, right? But that's a real choice. I mean, no doubt about it, that's a real choice. It may be that you've done enough things within your professional career that you're basically saying, you know what, I can do literally anything that, run myself relative to anything I've been experienced to better. I mean, I've got so much more going on here and I've led so many more successful thises and that's that I can do it on my own better. There isn't really an organization out there that can hold you. And the reason why is because there's the politics and there's the thing. They're playing the games. They're playing the games, and those games don't have anything to do with the customer. And some, on the face of it, are talking, oh, customer this, customer that, and they say customer 1,000 times a day. But underneath it all, it's politics, office politics, toxicity, drama, and all of these things, right? Conversations and connections that aren't being dealt with, right? Team synergy that is not being developed, individual talents, knowledge, skills, and talents, and all of it not being mentored along, not being trained, right? All these things. So people have to look at this and say, is this the right path for me? Yeah, I'm making really great money, but this is the road to nowhere, literally the road to nowhere. There is at no point in this journey going forward a happiness that I can recognize because, this is where it comes back to it, folks. You can have all the money in the world. It's not going to make you happy. If you're unhappy with nothing, you're going to be unhappy with everything. So you can play this exercise out in your mind. Imagine you have everything that you want, right? Maybe you don't want to do anything. You just want to lay on the beach. Fine. But imagine having that. How long are you laying on the beach, right? I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying you have to take everything to extreme to test it out. How long on the beach until you get a little bit like, I won't say jittery, but you get a little bit like, oh my gosh, I got to do something productive. I went through that phase, by the way. I was actually working and I did live on the beach. But on the beach, I realized, oh, no, I have more to do. I don't know where that came from, but that voice inside said, no, we've got more to do. We got other things to do. This isn't, and I would see, older generation, older than me, walking on the beach, and, hand in hand and doing their thing. And I would think to myself, okay, that's sweet. Da, 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 da. I'm like, I'm not there yet. I've got a lot to do. I've got some things to carve out and accomplish and to be able to help and serve and do all these things, right? So you can do the beach thing for a while. You can do the retirement thing for a while. Excuse me, I got to readjust myself here. Otherwise, the leg goes to sleep on the stool. But you can do a lot of these things for a while. But at a certain point, you're going to be, okay, I'm done with that. A good example is Forrest Gump. Remember in Forrest Gump, he's his mom's passed. He's on the porch. First of all, he's mowing and he's doing the things, and he's on the porch just rocking. And all of a sudden, he just stops. He gets up and he takes off running. And then that running phase, right, now becomes a phase of his life that you see play out in the rest of the movie. His role doing this has now come to an end, right? He was the warrior, the friend, all the things, the son, blah, blah, blah. And now he's going to do that, right? This is no different than the roles in our life, but we have to recognize when it's time to step up off that porch, to get up out of that rocking chair. you know. Now, if your life is at the, at the tail end and you're in your twilight years of enjoying your or golden years, I should say, is probably the better way to say it, and you're enjoying life, hey, and each to their own, enjoy your life by all means. But if there's that little voice inside your head that says, "Oh, we've got some things to accomplish," don't ignore it, because what may seem like paradise on the beach or on the porch, whatever, to some could be just drive you bananas, right? After an extended period of time, it could just drive you bananas. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to leave your town or leave your home and all that, but it does mean that you may have to shift gears a little bit. Maybe get back into a hobby or an interest or involved with other people. I've used this example before, but my mom went into a life care, nursing facility. She had MS, so she had to. And and I thought, oh my gosh, and she was living in her little apartment. She had a little neighbor friend here or there and that kind of thing. But when she got into that nursing home, and this isn't true for all, right? Some people go in and they're literally, they're about to make the crossing there at that point. But she went in there and she had her little friends and she played bingo and she became like this bingo queen where she was earning all this fake money, and buying stuff from their little gift shop and giving it to my grandkids and all the things, right? So she found a whole another life for a few years before she passed, and a culture, right? Fun, levity, goofing around, joking around, all of these things. And you just don't know what that next phase of life is going to bring you when you let go of that, untether your boat from that dock, stand up from that chair, step off that porch, and go for a run. Because, folks, we have to ask ourselves, are we being true to our role, right? Whether you believe in divine inspiration, intervention, whisper in the ear, that sort of thing, or not, it may be something within your own heart that is telling you, I need to go and I want to go do this other thing. It's something I've really had a passion for. Follow that journey. Follow it, right? Safely, of course. And I think what you're going to find is the momentary levels of, a little bit of anxiousness will then pass and become excitement, and a whole new world will open up to you. So be true to your role. Remember, if you're a rock, keep rolling. All right. And on that note, folks, remember to hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When we do this, not only are we helping to improve culture and people around us, but we're also improving our own lives, right? But remember, we can't transform anything on the outside if we're not willing first to transform on the inside. This is so important. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.